He died in torment, looking up, not at the sky, at a man he had seen every day for years and never once stopped for. The man was there now, across a chasm that nothing could cross, resting, recognized, held. And the man in torment, who had owned everything, who had worn purple and eaten from a table that was never empty, was begging for the moisture on the tip of a finger. Not a cup, not a stream, a drop, the minimum, the thing he had never once had to think about wanting, because he had always had everything before he could want it. The parable doesn't give us his name. Jesus named the poor man. Lazarus, God has helped, and left the rich man anonymous. That inversion is the verdict before the verdict. The man the world knew, whose burial was attended and whose tomb was beautiful, is nameless in the story that outlasted him. The man the world stepped over is the only one Jesus chose to name. How does a man end up there? Not through cruelty, not through violence, not through any crime that could be named and prosecuted, but through something quieter and in many ways more complete. How does a man spend a lifetime inside abundance and arrive at eternity with nothing, having lost everything through a mechanism so slow and so frictionless that he never felt it happening? It didn't start in Hades. It didn't start at the moment of death or at the funeral, or even on the last day he walked past Lazarus at the gate. It started the first day he walked past him. The first time the discomfort almost registered and didn't. The first time the choice was made so quietly that it didn't feel like a choice at all. That day is where this story actually begins. And that day looked almost exactly like today. He was not described as cruel. He was not described as violent, dishonest, or openly wicked. Jesus introduces him with two details: purple and fine linen, and a table that was never empty. Purple was not a color in the ancient world. It was a statement. The dye was extracted from sea snails, thousands of them, to produce enough pigment for a single garment. A robe dyed in Tyrian purple cost more than most families earned in a year. And beneath the purple, against his skin, Egyptian linen so fine it moved like water. From the inside out, every thread that touched this man's body was the most expensive thing available. He did not dress for warmth. He dressed to never have to think about what warmth cost. His table was not full on feast days. It was full every day. This is the detail Jesus emphasizes, not the quality of what he ate, but the constancy of it. A table that is never empty is a table that never produces anxiety. A man whose needs are always met before he feels them is a man who has been insulated from a particular kind of human experience. The experience of lack, of waiting, of needing something he cannot produce himself. He had purchased his way out of that experience entirely. And in doing so, he had purchased something far more consequential than comfort. He had purchased the inability to recognize its absence in someone else. This is the thing wealth buys that no one names at the point of purchase. Not the linen, not the lamb on the table, not the servants moving through marble corridors. The most dangerous thing money can buy is the removal of friction, the slow, invisible process by which a man is shielded from the discomfort of other people's lives, until that discomfort no longer registers as real. The rich man was not born indifferent. He was purchased into it, one comfortable day at a time, until the capacity to be interrupted by suffering had been so thoroughly anesthetized that Lazarus could lie at his gate for years and produce in him nothing. Not guilt, not discomfort, nothing. Lazarus was not across the city. He was not in a distant village, invisible behind geography and social separation. He was at the gate, the same gate the rich man passed through every morning and every evening. The entrance to his own estate, the threshold between his world and the street. Lazarus was placed there daily, which means someone carried him. He was too weak to walk to the gate himself. And yet the gate is where he ended up, every day, in the same spot, in the same condition, close enough to hear the music from inside, close enough to smell the food, close enough to be seen by anyone who chose to look. Jesus builds the geography of this parable with surgical precision. He does not place Lazarus in the background. He places him at the boundary, at the exact point where the rich man's world ended and the street began. This was not accidental proximity. It was the proximity of a test administered daily. The same exam, the same answer required, the same failure recorded. The gate was not a wall that blocked the rich man's view. It was a door he opened himself, walked through himself, and closed behind him. Every time. With Lazarus on the other side, the distance between them was not measured in feet. It was measured in fabric. In the cost of a single day's meal at the rich man's table, Lazarus could have eaten for months. The physical space between them was perhaps 10 steps. The purchased space, the space that money had built between the rich man's inner life and the reality of Lazarus's suffering, was absolute. Wealth had not moved Lazarus further away. It had made the rich man incapable of closing the distance that was already, physically, almost nothing. He saw Lazarus. This is not in question. A man lying covered in sores at the gate you use every day is not invisible. He is unavoidable. The rich man did not fail to notice Lazarus the way a person fails to notice a stranger in a crowd. He failed to process him, which is a different thing entirely, and a far more deliberate one. Noticing is involuntary. Processing is a choice. And the rich man, every day, chose to stop the sequence at the first step. He saw. He did not feel. He moved on. There is a specific skill required to do this consistently, and it is not cruelty. Cruel people feel something: contempt, hostility, the active pleasure of another's pain. The rich man felt none of that. What he had developed over years of frictionless living was something quieter and more complete: the ability to let another person's suffering enter his field of vision without ever reaching his interior. Lazarus registered his scenery, not as a man, not as a problem, as part of the landscape of the street, no different from the dust or the stones. This is what prolonged comfort purchases without announcing the transaction. Not hardness of heart in the dramatic sense, not a man who decided to stop caring, but a gradual narrowing of what counts as real, what registers as urgent, whose face produces a response. The rich man did not choose to stop feeling for Lazarus. He never started. And he never started because nothing in his constructed life had ever required him to. Wealth had built a world so complete, so internally sufficient, that nothing outside its walls needed to exist. Lazarus was outside the walls, so Lazarus did not exist. Picture him at the temple, robes of purple catching the morning light, hands lifted, lips moving in gratitude. Thank you for this abundance. Thank you for your favor. Thank you for the life you have given me. And he meant every word. This was not performance. The rich man prayed with the conviction of a man whose theology fit his life perfectly, because he had built one that would. In first-century Jewish culture, prosperity was widely understood as evidence of divine favor. The equation was simple and load-bearing. God rewards the righteous with abundance. A full table was not just comfort. It was confirmation. This theology did not make the rich man a hypocrite. It made him something more dangerous: sincere. He was not secretly aware that he was failing Lazarus and suppressing the knowledge. He had a framework that converted his comfort into confirmation. Every day his table was full was another day the theology held. Every day he walked past Lazarus was a day the system explained itself without requiring him to intervene. The poor man's suffering was not his responsibility. It was, within his worldview, its own kind of answer, a condition that existed for reasons above his pay grade. What this theology purchased, beyond the comfort of a clear conscience, was the transformation of indifference into innocence. The rich man did not need to justify ignoring Lazarus, because his belief system had already pre-justified it. The anesthesia was not just emotional, it was doctrinal. He had built a theology around his lifestyle, so seamlessly that the lifestyle never needed to be examined. And a life that never needs to be examined is a life that can travel very far in the wrong direction without ever feeling the distance. The first day he saw Lazarus was a choice. He looked, he processed. He felt the faint pull of something, discomfort, perhaps, or the beginning of a question, and he kept walking. That was a decision. It had weight. It cost him something small to make it, and the smallness of the cost is precisely what made it easy to make again the next day. The second day was easier than the first. The 10th day easier than the second. By the 100th day, Lazarus was not a choice anymore. He was wallpaper. The decision had been made so many times it had stopped being a decision and become a reflex, the automatic, unconsidered movement of a man who had trained himself, without knowing it, into a particular kind of person. This is how indifference becomes identity. Not through one dramatic choice to stop caring, but through the accumulated weight of small non-choices. Moments when action was possible and nothing happened, when the friction of another person's suffering almost registered and was quietly suppressed, when the muscle that responds to need was called upon and ignored until it stopped being called upon at all. The rich man did not decide to become someone who could walk past a dying man every day. He practiced it, daily, for years, until the practice was complete and the person it produced was fixed. And here is what the money made possible that nothing else could have. Poverty forces proximity to suffering, not always, but often enough to keep the muscle alive. A man without insulation is regularly interrupted by need, his own and others, and that interruption, however unwelcome, keeps something open. The rich man had purchased his way out of interruption entirely. His world was so complete, so sealed, so frictionless, that nothing ever broke through uninvited, and so the muscle atrophied. Not because he chose atrophy, because he had bought a life in which it was never needed, until the one morning, at a gate, when it was needed most, and it no longer worked. There was a first day. This is the detail the parable doesn't name, but cannot exist without. Lazarus did not appear at the gate already invisible. He arrived as a man, a specific man, with a face and a name, and a condition specific enough to be described in detail centuries later. Covered in sores, unable to walk, hungry enough that scraps from a table would have been sufficient. The first day Lazarus was placed at that gate, the rich man saw someone new, someone whose condition was impossible to misread. And in that moment, that first, unrepeatable moment, the full weight of choice was present in a way it would never be again. He could have stopped. The cost of stopping was not high. He was wealthy enough that feeding Lazarus would not have registered as a sacrifice. It would not have registered at all. He could have sent a servant. He could have left instructions at the gate. He could have done the smallest, most frictionless version of the right thing, and it would have been enough. The bar was not heroism. The bar was a scrap of bread and a moment of attention. That was all Lazarus needed. That was all the situation required. And the rich man, standing at the threshold of his own gate on that first day, looked at all of it. The sores, the hunger, the man, and chose to continue into his house. That choice, made once, became the template for every day that followed. This is what the parable is actually about, not the eternity that came after, but the mechanism that produced it. The rich man did not arrive at condemnation through a single catastrophic act. He arrived through repetition, the same gate, the same man, the same non-decision, compounding daily, building the architecture of who he was becoming without him ever having to notice the construction. By the time Lazarus died at that gate, the rich man had not merely failed to help him. He had become, through 10,000 small refusals, someone for whom helping was no longer possible. The capacity had been spent. Think about the thing you pass every day without stopping. Not a person, necessarily, maybe a conversation you keep not having, a condition you keep not addressing, a discomfort you keep not sitting with. The rich man's gate was literal. Yours may not be, but the mechanism is identical. Every day you keep walking is a day the walk gets easier. And every day it gets easier is a day the person you're becoming gets harder to reverse. This is the moment the parable demands you locate in your own life. Not the rich man's eternity that is settled and unreachable, but your gate, the one you crossed this morning, the one you will cross tomorrow, the one that still has someone on the other side of it, and a choice that still has weight because you have not yet made it enough times for it to stop being a choice. Lazarus died first. The text records it without ceremony, without mourning, without a single detail about where or how, because there was nothing to record. No family gathered, no funeral arranged, no one marked the moment. A man who had been invisible in life became invisible in death with the same effortless consistency. His body was likely collected by indifferent hands and taken outside the city to a place where the unclaimed dead were buried without name or marker. The world that had ignored him while he breathed ignored him completely when he stopped. But something happened that no one on the street saw. Angels came. The man who had been carried to the rich man's gate by strangers was now carried by angels to Abraham's side, to a place of honor, rest, and recognition among the righteous dead. For the first time in his life, Lazarus was received, not tolerated, not stepped around, received. The hands that had never reached for him on earth reached for him the moment earth was done with him. And the name that no one at the rich man's gate had ever spoken, the name God had always known, was the name that mattered now. The rich man also died. And here the text adds a detail it withheld from Lazarus. He was buried, a grand burial, a procession, mourners, eulogies, the full weight of public honor. The world that had validated him in life validated him one final time in death. His tomb was beautiful. His memory was celebrated. And none of it followed him past the threshold. Wealth can purchase a burial that looks like an arrival. It cannot purchase what comes after. The angels did not come for him. And the tomb, however ornate, was the last thing money ever bought him that meant anything at all. In Hades, the rich man lifted his eyes and saw Abraham and Lazarus at his side. This is the first time in the narrative that the rich man truly sees Lazarus not as scenery, not as an obstacle to step around, as a specific man in a specific place, in a condition the rich man now understands with terrible clarity because he is experiencing its opposite. For years, Lazarus had been at his gate and the rich man had looked through him. Now Lazarus is at Abraham's side and the rich man cannot look away. But what he says next reveals that death changed his location without changing his structure. He does not address Lazarus. He addresses Abraham and asks Abraham to send Lazarus, to send him as though Lazarus were still an errand boy, still someone whose purpose was to serve the rich man's needs. Even in torment, the hierarchy as money had built inside him remained intact. He was not asking for reconciliation. He was not asking for recognition. He was asking for a service. The anesthesia that had prevented him from seeing Lazarus as fully human had not been cured by death. It had simply been made irrelevant by distance. And even across that distance, it still shaped how he spoke. This is the most quietly devastating detail in the parable. Not the flames, not the chasm, but the fact that a man in eternal torment, looking at the consequences of his indifference, still defaults to the relational posture that indifference built. He spent a lifetime treating Lazarus as beneath him. Death revealed that Lazarus was above him, and his first response was to ask Lazarus to come back down. The money was gone. The linen was gone. The table was gone. But the man the money had made, that remained. And it remained exactly as it had been built. He did not ask for a river. He did not ask for a stream, or a cup, or even a handful of water. He asked for the moisture on the tip of a finger. One drop, enough to cool his tongue for a moment. This is the request of a man who has recalibrated entirely. A man who once had everything now understands, with the precision that only deprivation teaches, exactly how much the minimum is worth. He had never known what it felt like to need the minimum. Now, it was all he could imagine wanting. The mathematics of the inversion are exact and merciless. Lazarus had asked for scraps. The bread used to wipe hands at the rich man's table, discarded without thought. He did not receive them. The rich man now asks for a drop of water. He will not receive it either. What the rich man denied Lazarus was not luxury. It was the minimum required to survive. What the rich man now begs for is not comfort. It is the minimum required to endure. The scale has collapsed to the same point, from two opposite directions. And at that point, there is nothing left to exchange. The transaction that should have happened at the gate, decades earlier, is now permanently closed. Abraham's answer is not cruel. It is precise. He does not mock the rich man's suffering. He points to a moral reality. The rich man spent a lifetime ignoring that the imbalance between what one man had and what another man needed was not incidental. It was the condition the rich man was responsible for and chose daily not to address. The comfort is gone now. The table is gone. The linen is gone. What remains is the arithmetic of what was given and what was withheld. And in eternity, that arithmetic does not round. Then he thought of his brothers. 5 of them, still alive, still at the table, still inside the world he had just left. And for the first time in the narrative, the rich man's concern extends beyond himself. He asks Abraham to send Lazarus to warn them, to tell them what is coming, to give them what he was never given. A clear signal from the other side before it was too late. It is the most human moment in his portion of the story. And it arrived in eternity, after the gate had closed, when there was no longer any mechanism for delivering it. This is the detail that makes the parable land differently than a simple warning about wealth. The rich man was not a man without the capacity for love. He had brothers he thought of in his worst moment. He had enough left in him to want them spared. But that capacity for concern, for connection, for the desire that others not suffer, had been so thoroughly directed inward, so consistently reserved for himself and his own, that it never reached the man at his gate. The anesthesia was not total. It was selective. And what it selected against, every day for years, was Lazarus. Abraham's answer closes every remaining door. They have Moses and the prophets. The Word of God contains everything necessary to call a person toward justice, humility, and care for the suffering. If that has not moved them, a messenger from the dead will not move them either. The problem was never insufficient information. The rich man had the same scriptures his brothers had. He had read the same words about the poor, the widow, the stranger at the gate. The information was available. The will to let it interrupt his comfort was not. And that, Abraham makes clear, is not a problem that miracles solve. The great chasm Abraham describes, fixed, permanent, uncrossable, did not appear at the moment of death. That is the detail the parable buries in plain sight. The chasm was not imposed. It was constructed. Every morning the rich man walked past Lazarus, he added to it. Every evening he returned to his table without a second thought, he deepened it. The gap between him and Lazarus that seemed, in life, to be a matter of fabric and food was being recorded in a currency he did not know he was spending. By the time death came, the chasm was already complete. Death did not create it. Death only made it visible. This is the thing about anesthesia that makes it more dangerous than cruelty. A cruel man knows he is doing harm. He feels the edges of what he is doing, even if he does not stop. The anesthetized man feels nothing, which means he receives no feedback, no warning, no signal that anything is being built in the wrong direction. The rich man went to his grave without ever experiencing a moment that told him something was wrong. His theology confirmed him. His comfort confirmed him. His burial confirmed him. The only thing that did not confirm him was the one voice that had always known his name, and that voice he had never learned to hear. The most dangerous thing money can buy is not arrogance. Arrogance is visible. It can be named, confronted, repented of. The most dangerous thing money can buy is the removal of the conditions under which a person discovers who they actually are. Wealth, at its most lethal, builds a world so complete that its owner never has to be interrupted, never has to be insufficient, never has to reach outside himself for anything. And a man who never has to reach outside himself never discovers that he has stopped being able to. The rich man did not know what he had lost until he was somewhere without it. By then, the chasm was fixed, and no one crosses a chasm they finished building on the day they died. The parable ends without resolution for the rich man. Abraham speaks. The chasm holds. The 5 brothers remain on the other side with Moses and the prophets in whatever time they have left. Jesus closes the story there, not with a verdict delivered to the living, but with a condition left open. The gate is still there. Lazarus is still at it. The choice is still available in the way it is only available while breath remains. This is the only detail in the parable that has not yet been fixed, and it is the only one that matters for anyone still reading it. The rich man's story is over. His gate is closed, his chasm fixed, his request for a single drop unanswered. But the parable was not told for him. It was told for the people standing on the other side of the story, listening, with gates of their own, and someone on the other side of each one. Jesus told this story to people who were still alive, people who still had the morning, still had the return home in the evening, still had the accumulated weight of small choices that had not yet calcified into permanent character. The parable's urgency is not about what happened to the rich man. It is about what has not yet happened to the listener. There is someone at your gate. The name may be different. The condition may look different. The gate itself may be a phone you don't answer, a conversation you keep postponing, a need you have trained yourself to walk past with the efficiency of long practice. But the mechanism is the same, and the chasm operates on the same timeline it always has, built in life, revealed in death, fixed at the crossing. The gate is still open. The choice still has weight. The only question the parable leaves unanswered is the one it was always asking. What will you do with the time before it doesn't? The chasm Abraham described was not a punishment handed down from above. It was a structure the rich man had spent his entire life building from below. One crossed gate, one ignored morning, one frictionless day at a time. By the time death came, the construction was complete. What eternity revealed was not something new. It was something finished. The rich man arrived at the chasm the same way he had arrived at everything else in his life, without noticing the cost until the bill was already settled. He got the purple. He got the linen. He got the table that was never empty and the burial that the world attended. He got a life so complete, so sealed, so internally sufficient that nothing outside its walls ever needed to exist. And what that life purchased, beyond the comfort and the status and the daily abundance, was the slow, invisible removal of the one thing that could have saved him, the capacity to be interrupted by suffering, by need, by the face of a man at his own gate who was dying at the speed of being ignored. The most dangerous thing money can buy is not what it gives you. It is what it quietly takes away. There is a gate in your life. You know where it is. You have crossed it before. This morning, maybe, or yesterday, or so many times that the crossing no longer registers as a decision. A person on the other side may not look like Lazarus. The need may not be as visible, but the mechanism is the same, and the chasm operates on the same timeline it always has. It is being built right now in the choices that feel too small to matter, in the discomfort that almost registers and doesn't, in the mornings that look almost exactly like today. The gate is still open. That is the only detail in this story that has not yet been fixed. Use it.